Hello interwebs, welcome to Let's Fix Computers. I've got an interesting demonstration of a fault today that I'm going to show with you. Quick and simple video. And that is talking about laptop coolers and a failure mode on how they can fail. So I've got a Dell Inspiron 3585 here, and this is an example of the heat pipe on it. So we've got a cold plate here with a heat pipe and a fin stack or radiator on the end of it. So this is the cooler that would go in this laptop. Don't worry, this laptop has another one in it. This one has, and I've actually got a failed one in the laptop, and I want to show you that failure mode because it's very insidious and it's easy to miss if you don't know what to look for. And I think it's kind of interesting to look at this failure mode because it's the second time I've seen it in like the past 6 months. And so basically I just want to show you what it looks like so you might recognize it if you encounter this issue. So let's start by having a look at what's on the laptop screen, and I will show you firstly just the symptoms of the fault. And I'm going to do that right after the intro. So we're set up here with a couple of bits open. So firstly, I've got Task Manager open that's showing us the status of the CPU. We've got a Ryzen 5 2500U here. Nothing to write home about it, but it is a quad-core 8-thread CPU, so it's not too shabby. So base speed is 2 GHz, but this CPU should be able to boost up to like at least 3 GHz. So that's what we're expecting to see out of it. On the right here, I've got hardware monitor, so we can have a look at the temperature of the CPU up here. And there's some other stats. We can also just see power draw and stuff like that, but the temperature is what I really care about on this screen. And then finally, I've got good old Intel burn test here. Intel burn test is not a particularly good stress test by modern standards. However, to demonstrate a catastrophic overheating problem, you don't need a strong stress test. You just need something that is simple and will just beat the CPU over the head for a bit. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to set this up. I'm just going to hit go on this, and we should just see these temperatures skyrocket, which will indicate that we have an overheating problem. The other thing that we're going to look for is the boost speed, because when we start overheating, we're going to see that the CPU is just not boosting. And that is what will lead us into the next thing that I will explain, which is a CPU a laptop that is overheating but still working. So let's hit start on that. Now burn-in test runs in cycles. It prepares for a moment and then it actually hits load. So we'll see load and unload cycles as it goes through. But right now you can see our temperatures are soaring at the moment. It's not unusual to see laptops running close to the red line, up in the 90s. But the point is we don't really want them to be super hot. And if we're getting into the mid to high 90s, that's too hot. So let's just give this a moment just to get going and just let heat soak set in. It won't take long because the cooler is the size of my index finger. All right, there we go. That was a really good example because as you can see, our load has just crashed down to 20% or 19%. And there we go. And it's bounced back. But as you can see, our speed is completely collapsing. That's thermal throttle. So the CPU is bouncing off of the 100-degree limiter and is throttling hard down to like 400 megahertz kind of thing. Yeah, 380 megahertz. So that is an absolutely cataclysmic amount of thermal throttling. Now, because we're under a stress test scenario here, this is not realistic per se. You're not going to get hit with this kind of load during average use, but it demonstrates that the laptop is completely failing to control its temperature. But notice that we haven't crashed. Windows are still moving. I can still open the start menu. So if the customer is experiencing this, they're not going to see a problem. The laptop isn't crashing, it's not freezing, but at the same time, it's going to run slowly and it's going to be unresponsive and it's going to be a bit, But again, even at 400 megahertz, I can still move this window around just fine. So this is why you'll get an issue. You'll be servicing the laptop and you'll be like, it feels fine, but it's not right. And the fan is going like the clappers. But if I put my hand over the fan and find it, Where is it? The fan is blowing cold air. Now, if you're thermal throttling at 100 degrees under full load, the fan shouldn't be blowing cold air. It should be blowing hot air. Hot air is good. You want hot air coming out the laptop because that means it's actually dumping heat. So, there's the problem. So, a lot of you are probably screaming to the monitor, "Thermal paste! Thermal paste!" at the moment. Well, let's have a look, shall we? Let's stop this torment. And I'm going to shut down the laptop and let's have a look at the thermal paste. So here's the inside, pretty simple setup here. Let's just undo these 4 screws. Oh, I should probably unplug the battery as well. Whoop. As a treat. Alright, now if we lift that off, surprise, I've already replaced the thermal paste. It's brand new. It's tacky still. The paste isn't the problem. So if you've already done the thermal paste and it's still overheating and the fan is spinning, we know the fan was spinning because you could hear it going and it was blowing cold air out. So what's the problem? The problem has to be the heat pipe. Now, a lot of people go, oh, the heat pipe is kinked, but if you look, it's not. It's straight as an arrow. It's fine. There's no visible damage to this heat pipe at all. So what we can do now is we can take a closer look and we can see how the heat pipe has in fact failed. So I'm just going to go ahead and just mush some of this thermal paste back on. I'm going to be taking this back on and off a couple of times, so I'm not going to keep placing thermal paste on it. The thermal paste isn't that critical, just some is enough. Now I'm going to use my thermal camera to look at the heat pipe in action, but the issue is because it's shiny metal, it's actually difficult to film it with the thermal camera because there's reflections all over it. So I'm going to put this masking tape over the top, and the masking tape will heat up, and because it's not reflective, it will help us see the failure mode. So it should just be enough for me to just do this. And I'm just going to use the back of my nail just to make sure that's actually stuck down. Right, and let's start the laptop back up. Right, I've got our stress test running again. Let's flip the laptop over and take a look at that cooler. Okay, so now with the Infrared P2 Pro thermal camera, you can see that huge orange stripe. That is the heat pipe, and the first section of it is doing its job just fine. But look at where the fan is, which is there's the fan. Oh wow, the heat differential is so enormous that my hand just looks cold. Also, my circulation sucks. So anyway, so here's the fan where my finger is pointing, but the heat pipe where the fan is stone cold. There's no heat there at all. It's getting up to about there and then just stopping. So there's some kind of blockage in the heat pipe or a kink or something that is invisible to the eye, but it's very clearly there. You can see the heat is just burning. It's lava hot and then just suddenly it's not. So that's why we've got no cooling here and we're just burning up. All of this is on fire with the heat, but none of the heat is actually getting to the fin stack. And you might say, well, it's the fin stack, it's supposed to be cold. No, the fin stack is supposed to be hot. That's where all the heat is supposed to be going. Then the fan blows it off. That's the point. So this is the failure mode. This is what it looks like. Now let's change over to the replacement heat pipe I've got, and we'll look at what that does instead. Now the funny thing is, the replacement heat pipe I've got, if you have a look there, you can actually see, in the reflection there's a slight dink in it. So you might look at that and go, well, that's got a problem, right? This is the working one. So sometimes those visual indicators, you can look out for them, but they're not really a surefire way of judging it. If you see a massive kink in the heat pipe, obviously that's going to be a problem. But a slight little ding like that probably isn't it. Right, now we're back under load again, and you'll notice that our CPU did peak up to 100 degrees again, and that was the point when the fan kicked in. And now the fan has kicked in, it's settled down to 80 degrees and dropping as the fan ramps up. And our actual boost clocks, about the same, 2.56, 2.57. If it wasn't an all-core load, we would be seeing boost turbos of up to 3 gigahertz on this, so it'd have a bit more in it. But the important thing is that our thermals are actually under control, and we're not throttling into the Stone Age. Oh, it actually is. Now it's dropped down into the high 70s. We actually saw 3 gigahertz again there. So you can see how we're not overheating anymore. So we're actually getting peak performance. Let's look at the thermal camera again. And now when we look at the thermal camera, you can see that hot stripe, that's going all the way up into the fin stack now. And it was actually a little bit deeper into there. However, the fan is actually blowing off the heat right at the tip. And if I just disconnect the fan for a sec, just to let the temperature soar, as you can see, the end of the heat pipe there, that's actually heating up fully now. It's actually saturating the heat pipe, despite the little ding in it. So now our temperature is going to build back up again because there's nothing blowing heat off. So I'm going to quickly plug the fan back in once more. Okay, you know what I was saying, how we only needed a basic stress test to actually demonstrate the issue? Well, now I've fixed the cooling problem. Intel Burn Test is not loading this CPU enough to actually peg it to its maximum temperature. So the fan isn't running at high speed anymore. Anyway, you saw it at one point when the fan was at very high speed, and the end of the heat pipe was just cooling down slightly. So the long and the short of it is, that's a demonstration on what a failed heat pipe actually looks like. And now you might say, okay, well, I don't have a thermal camera, so how am I supposed to spot this? Well, it's pretty easy to do it without a thermal camera as well. I'm not going to put in the old cooler again because I've actually had it in and out about 4 times now. And the customer is actually going to come and collect this laptop at any moment. But what you can do, even if you don't have a thermal camera, is you can just do touch tests, basically. So it's difficult to say exactly what temperature the heat pipe is at, because in order to measure it, I've got to put the masking tape on it, and that masking tape covers the true temperature, so I couldn't tell you exactly how hot it is, but at the very least, it's going to be 60 or 70 degrees C absolute minimum, which is enough to burn your finger. So if I put the back of my finger on there, that's burning to the touch. I can't hold my finger there. Now, on the busted heat pipe, which is over here, on the busted one, what I was able to do is go, ow, 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 cold. And I could just put my finger on there, no problem. Whereas on this one, ow, 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 that's burning to the touch all the way to the end of the heat pipe. It's called a heat pipe for a reason. If the heat pipe isn't burning your finger, then it's not doing its job. Or at the very least, you should find a fairly uniform temperature throughout the heat pipe. A lot of people would imagine, oh, well, it's supposed to be hot at one end and cold at the other, right? No, it will actually it will be about a uniform temperature. There's going to be differences in there, and I'm sure you could find a hot spot at one end and a slightly cooler spot at the other. But broadly speaking, if the end of the pipe isn't hot, then it's not doing its job. The heat is supposed to get to the end of the pipe so the fan can blow the heat away. That's the point. Anyway, I hope you guys found that kind of interesting as a demonstration of what this looks like. If you think you've got this issue, replacement coolers for laptops, if you can find one, they're usually, I don't know, $10 or $20 tops on eBay. So keep that in mind, basically. If you've got an overheating problem, it might not be the thermal paste. You might have a busted heat pipe that looks completely normal, with no visible problems, no kinks, no dents, no nothing. If you know what has happened to this heat pipe, let me know down in the comments below. Maybe it's cracked somewhere and the air inside it has leaked out. Some heat pipes have an exotic gas inside them. Some of them just have air inside them. Some of them use water vapor. So if you're a heat pipe expert, let me know what you think. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time. Bye.